teachers and fellow classmates. Before we start our interview, let us introduce ourselves first. I am Mary Alicia Peggy,
Aliyah Chris Tiguma,
Janica May Gutierrez,
Samuel Luis del Espiritu Santo,
Ken Cipres,
and Gabriel Makatuwal.
Our topic is all about the struggles and experiences of teaching during the pandemic, and we chose a teacher at Cavite State University and a guidance counselor at Colegio Ang Luzon ng Cascarinas as our interviewee. Good afternoon po, ma'am. First of all, thank you for accepting our request for this interview po, and also accepting us here in your lovely abode.
My pleasure.
May I ask you to please introduce yourself po, and also what would you like us to call you?
I am Jezreel del Espiritu Santo, but I prefer people, especially my students and even my friends, to call me Jill so that I would feel comfortable talking.
So let us start our questions. Ready na po ba kayo? Some mentioned to us na you experienced teaching at home during the pandemic po, right? Our first question, what inspired you to become a teacher and what do you miss about teaching in person po?
What inspired me to become a teacher? Actually, I didn't really think about, or I didn't even think about teaching talaga. No? It just so happened na there was a scarcity of teaching personnel in the school that I was working in before. So they tapped me if I would want to try. And from then on, I realized that it's really what I would want to do. And for the question of the experience of teaching or what I miss teaching face to face, of course, it's a different energy when you teach inside a classroom and then you get to interact with your students compared to you're just at home.
What are the struggles you encountered during online class teaching po?
One of the very first struggles I've experienced, of course, the internet connection, the erratic, intermittent internet connection, no? Kasi even I myself as a teacher, diba, when I lose my connection, it's it brings you a lot of anxiety because you wouldn't know when it will come back on, or I'm in the middle of an important discussion, yung mga ganon, no? My experience, especially, since we are a public university, no, not everybody has stable internet connection. So we don't require our students to turn on their cameras when we discuss. So it's one of the challenges kasi how would you know if the student is still there? They might have logged in and then they stood up or took a nap, diba? So we wouldn't have any way of knowing. Except every now and then, as personally, no, I would ask them to turn on their cam just to check on them. Pero I don't say naman outright na parang, oh, turn on your cam, I want to see what you're doing. It's as if parang I'm going to give them activities, ganyan, or I will make it into a joke, mga ganon.
As you mentioned earlier po, you also struggled with the pandemic. What do you think are the factors affecting and making both teachers and students struggle at time of the pandemic po?
In terms of their studies, of course, when you're stuck at home, no, now kasi medyo maluwag na, diba? Pero before kasi, especially for students, I can say na it's really difficult for them, no, kasi school is not just a place of, let's say, studying, assignments, exams, no. It's also a place where they can get to express themselves. Diba? It's iba-iba yung, there's a different feeling when you are with your friends. So even if mahirap yung subject, mahirap yung exam, after the class, you'll get to laugh with each other, diba? Yung mga ganung jokes. So it's sort of parang your break with whatever struggles you're dealing with inside the classroom, diba? Kahit na andun yung kaba mo. While if you are at home, diba, it's difficult na parang kunyari napahiya ka or kinakabahan ka, you wouldn't have someone just beside you to say no na right away na it's okay, we're here, yung ganon, no? Yung parang the security that your friends give you, mga ganon. When the pandemic started, I was also enrolled in my PhD class, and I would I'm not that techy, no. I know how to use the computers and such and stuff, no. Pero there's syempre certain things, especially when you're making use of yung mga applications na, yung mga online learning platforms. And I really, as a student, not as a teacher, I really experienced having a breakdown before the start of the class. It just so happened that I have my friends now with me. So imagine those students who started, let's say, who started their high school year, their junior year or senior year. They do not know anyone, and then they do not get to to interact personally or see them, diba? How would you start a conversation? How would you start making friends if all you see are faces from online? So I do understand how it is for students.
How did you teaching at home affect you as a mother? Like, how did you manage your time to being a mother and a teacher po?
At the start, it's very difficult because aside from what do you call this? Aside from yung mga parang house chores, of course, the dynamics at home, di ba? Just like what I've mentioned nga earlier, sometimes you forget that there are boundaries. Kasi that's the ano parang what do you call this? Di ba when you get to teach, you go to school and then when you get home, you're a mom, di ba? Parang it's already your choice if you are going to do your work or not. Pero basically, you just leave your work in the office or in school. Pero now, yun nga, parang even if it's already 8 o'clock in the evening, 9 o'clock, there would be students who would be messaging. Even though I was at home most of the time, but I do not get to to look at my children, at my house, na talagang parang I realized that I wasn't able to give them the attention that I need to give them, no. And personally speaking, no, parang it was also a struggle for me, especially with my two older kids who started their studies in college na online. Kasi parang before or with them kasi 'di ba parang if you're starting, let's say with my youngest, 'di ba parang he's when the pandemic happened, they turned to online class, but he still has his friends and classmates, di ba, nandun. But imagine yun nga, yung struggle of my eldest and second son, no? And one of the things na parang which happened was I was there, di ba, parang motivating students to continue their studies, to hang in there, without me realizing that I wasn't really of course I was there, but I felt guilty that I was not giving my 100%. Imagine your frustration that you're there for other kids to give them support, but then here are my children also struggling online because I've always thought that they can get by because they know how to use the computer naman, ganyan. Pero it's really not that easy.
As a guidance counselor, have you encountered students who weren't taking the online class seriously and how you handle them?
Yeah, I had a lot of, as a guidance counselor, I had a lot of reports wherein the professors and teachers would tell me that they have several students who are not attending classes. But I do understand those students naman because those students, actually it's not those students who are not taking online classes seriously. It's just that they were forced to work to become working students. That is why they have to somehow they really want to continue their studies, but they were forced to take on a job to help their families. It's not that they are not taking it seriously, but they are also having a hard time.
As a student po, minsan hindi talaga maiiwasan yung hindi namin maintindihan yung lessons and minsan boring po talaga. And how do you motivate your students po to become active learners in your class?
Of course, you have to be relevant, di ba? You have to make sure that you know what is happening or the interest of your class. So, right now, di ba, parang as a college instructor, I need to be aware of what's in, especially in TikTok, yung mga ganon. So that before you start the class, you have something in common that you get to talk about, no? And of course, you do not limit your assignments lang with, let's say, written ones, yung mga ganon, no? Just like what you're doing now, di ba?
Yes.
Parang sort of an interview, yung ganon. So, somehow, you get to be with each other. So, yung mga behind the scenes, medyo na-enjoy yon, di ba? But before, when it was still parang medyo mahigpit pa, di ba? So, of course, we have to also resort with, yun, mga creative video content creation na nakastay lang
For
sila.
our last question, what do you think is the best advice that you could give to students and teachers who are struggling at this time of pandemic?
At the time of pandemic. Now that medyo maluwag-luwag na, no? Actually, one of the first struggles before, no, yung resistance, di ba? Na parang, I can't do this kasi I'm not into parang online. Mas comfortable pa rin ako sa personal, yung ganyan. But you see, the reality of things is that we are already within our 2 years na medyo lumuluwag-luwag na nga. So, the best advice that I could give is whatever the situation it is, you embrace it as it is. Do not resist. No, you just need to learn different coping skills. No, like before, 'di ba, parang nauso yung mga plantito, plantita. As funny as it sounds, it's a coping mechanism. 'Di ba? And same thing with students. You need to find some ways on how you'll get to balance yung mga your studies. If you feel that you are overwhelmed, then stop whatever it is that you're doing, 'di ba? Sometimes sabi nga nila, 'di ba, parang it's a change of perspective. If you feel that you are being suffocated by a lot of online work, tapos 'di ba kasi nga iba nga yun na sabay, just like now, 'di ba, kunyari sabay-sabay kayo naggagawa ng assignments. It's a different thing when you are alone. So you just find whatever it is that you would enjoy. And if you feel overwhelmed that you have a lot of things to do, as a guidance counselor, I always tell my counselors, my students, you have to write it down. You have to prioritize. Kasi our brain works at, what do you call this? Our brain works with what we can feel, what we can see, what we can hear. So if you are going to write down the things that you're supposed to do, and then you have a mental memory na, ito yon, ganyan. And then, di ba, once you get to accomplish one task after another, and then you put a check on it, somehow you get relief. And it tells our mind na, okay, you're getting there. There are a lot of things that you need to do, but at least you are able to finish one after another.
Okay, that's it po. Thank you again for accepting our request for inviting
Thank
us
you
to your
so
lovely
much.
show. Okay, once lang give it up for Mrs. Jasril. And give it up, guys. Ito po, yung ano lang.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you po, guys.